As you know, we are in Cucapá territory, estamos en territorio Cucapá. And we did in the Chicano Studies program, especially in the study of Transfronterizx, we have the strong belief that borders divide, and we have to acknowledge the Native American community. Por milenios, los pueblos indígenas, Cumaí, Cachán y Cucapá, que son originarios de esta región, han sido parte de esta tierra. Esta tierra los ha nutrido, sanado, protegido, acogido durante muchísimas generaciones en una relación de equilibrio y armonía. Siendo miembros de la comunidad de San Diego State University Valle Imperial, nosotros reconocemos esta herencia y promovemos este equilibrio y armonía. Hemos encontrado inspiración en esta tierra, la tierra de los Cumaí, Cachán y Cucapá. And next slide. Okay. And the topics we're going to be talking about will be divided into 4 subtopics. First, we're going to talk about Building Bridges Initiative in the Transborder Scholar Cooperative, right? Then we'll talk about transborder graduation in higher education mode. We're going to present a models that Carlos and Vane has worked with Dr. Lopez and I, myself. Third, we're going to give words to our campus leader, Henry, for example, right, and other members of our community from San Diego State. And fourth, and most important, in my opinion, testimonies from our graduates. Graduates like Carolina, Andrea, and Sara, the primary source, the voice of this successful event, but also their successful stories, because this is about them. Without them, we wouldn't have this. All right, and let's go to our next slide. And about the Imperial Valley, about sobre el Valle Imperial, el SDSU Valle Imperial, Campus Valle Imperial, ¿no? SDSU Imperial Valley is a branch campus of San Diego State University. It is established in 1959. The campus offers undergraduate education, graduate programs, and credential programs for teachers preparation. In 2004, SDSU IV was federally designed as a Hispanic serving institution. SDSU Imperial Valley faculty are multinational in their classroom orientation and background. The Calexico campus is located in the 8 acres of block in the heart of the Calexico Civic Center. And it is a couple of miles away, blocks away from the U.S. Mexican border. We also have the campus in Brawley. And again, here we see a former student of mine, Christina. Throughout these gates will pass the future. And yes, we are an extended campus. And therefore, we do have various good things, but also conflicts, right? Barriers. And one of the barriers is that we're not served well. Like, for example, there's a lot of the students at SDSU pay the same tuition. Yes, those tuition fees are not being reflected in the campus. And that's one of the problems that we have been facing since I was a student.
Okay, so part of our forum is to inaugurate the Transborder Scholar Collaborative, which is dedicated to the social justice of Transfronterizx students and education along the U.S. Mexico borderlands. As Transborder scholars ourselves, we are committed to implementing critically conscious research and practices through liberatory methodologies centered on the holistic development of our Transfronterizx community in education. And that is what this forum is also about. So one, we're inaugurating this collaborative, but two, we're also presenting a model based on our grassroots work dedicated to the Building Bridges graduation, with the hopes that this can inspire other allies and other educators along the borderlands to also serve their transborder student communities in their institutions. So who are we? As I mentioned, we are transborder, somos transfronterizos. Myself, my positionality, I am transfronteriza from the San Diego-Tijuana borderlands. Newly now, also for the last 2 years, I'm proud to call home the Imperial Valley Mexicali borderlands as well. And I'm a scholar and organizer dedicated to the social justice of transborder students and an assistant professor in the Division of Education and the School of Teacher Education at SDSU. With us today are also our research associates for the Transborder Scholar Collaborative, and also transborder is Carlos A. Fitch, who is a master candidate in the Equity, Education, and Social Justice at Cal State Long Beach, and also alum for SDSU Imperial Valley and former AS president. Also transfronterizo is Chicano transfronterizo Gilberto Reyes, a research associate for the Transborder Scholar Collaborative, adjunct professor in history and advisor to the Chicanx Sin Fronteras Student Organization, founding advisor for the Chicanx Sin Fronteras Student Organization at SDSU Imperial Valley. And with us also is Efren Lopez, also research associate for the Transborder Scholar Collaborative, assistant professor in English at SDSU Imperial Valley, and also a transborder student ally in our region. So before we begin, let's all just get on the same page on who are transborder students. If you've never heard of the term transborder or transborderism or transborder students, in a nutshell, what it means is that it's the engagement, collaboration between a border and two different nations. This engagement is frequent. It happens very often. It can happen between people. It can happen between institutions and organizations. And specifically for transborder students, as defined by Norma Iglesias Prieto, they are transborder citizens. As transborder citizens, they are significantly engaged on both sides of the border, linguistically, socially, academically, professionally. And this engagement has a profound influence on their identity development, but also academic trajectories as well. Transborder students are prevalent along the U.S. Mexico borderlands and through the entire education pipeline, from preschool all the way to doctoral studies, and yes, along the U.S. Mexico borderlands as well. This experience has a profound influence on their identity and who they are. And also an important note about the transborder student experience is the factors that lead them to live these transborder lives. And two most critical factors are due to economic hardship and having to live across the border to be able to have a humane living arrangement, and also due to being part of mixed immigration status families, and because of deportation, having to live at the borderlands to stay together with their loved ones. And this is where we situate our work, serving the most vulnerable populations of our transborder student populations, and that is transborder students who are of mixed immigration status families. And with this graduation, for a moment, ameliorating that border and providing the opportunity to celebrate with their loved ones. So what is the Building Bridges graduation? The Building Bridges graduation was first implemented on May 14, 2022 by the SDSU Imperial Valley Cross-Cultural Center at Casa de la Cultura de Mexicali. This historic ceremony was dedicated to building bridges between the U.S. Mexico border by providing graduates whose immediate family members cannot cross the border to attend their commencement the opportunity to celebrate graduation with their loved ones in Mexico. This first-of-a-kind graduation provided 44 graduates whose immediate family members cannot cross the border the opportunity to celebrate commencement with loved ones in Mexico. Since the inception of the Building Bridges graduation, we have implemented this transborder graduation annually at SDSU Imperial Valley in 2022 and 2023, and at SDSU main campus with our colleagues at SDSU San Diego just as of recently in the summer of 2023, serving 174 Transfronterizx students and their families along the California and Baja California borderlands. And, just to emphasize, this is a this is a collaborative effort, and they would not be possible without the support of everybody that you will meet and see today here in this forum, and most certainly as well, it could not have been possible without the support of our campus leaders. And in a moment, we'll have an opportunity to meet and meet them and hear more about their experiences. And now we would like to present to you our model, specifically on how to implement a transborder graduation in higher education. We developed this model since the inception, since the beginning of our work with the Building Bridges graduation in 2022. And we analyzed our practices through photo voice, collaborative autoethnography, and pláticas. And really what we did was engage in these methods to explore what were our experiences and what did we really need to make this initiative a success and to be able to implement it for the very first time. So we analyzed our practices based on the inaugural Building Bridges graduation that happened in 2022. And now we're very proud to present this model for the very first time with all of you here today. And also we'll be presenting this model at the Association for the Study of Higher Education. We'll go over in more detail about what these specific sections of this model are. But just to begin, it's important to understand that our transborder capital and also network was paramount in the inception and implementation of this initiative. And we'll revisit the model a little more thoroughly in a moment.
Hey, so as Dr. Falcon said, I'm Efren Lopez, and I'm a professor of English and Comp Lit here. I'm a transborder ally. I'm a third-generation Chicano from LA. My father and grandfather were born in the borderlands of El Paso, Texas. Just a little bit of background. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the conceptual framework that we used in implementing this graduation. Our organizing principles were built off previous scholarship, both practically and theoretically. Transborder scholars such as Falcon and Monk, for example, have noted, quote, the lack of programs and services focused on fostering the academic support of Transfronterizx students in higher education institutions along the U.S. Mexico borderlands, and that this reveals the absence of institutional responsibility for creating a welcoming environment for this student population. In response, the Building Bridges graduation marshaled cross-community and institutional resources as part of this staff, faculty, and student-led program. This initiative also builds off scholars like Kizar, who assert that grassroots leaders operate strategically to foster institutional change by aligning their initiatives with university mission statements. In turn, we align this initiative with SDSU's strategic plan to transcend borders and transform lives, as well as SDSU's HSI's existing mission to serve transborder communities. This alignment set the groundwork for us to receive institutional support. For instance, from the Office of the President, who was an early supporter of us for both years. So by building from scholars like Kizar, Monk, and Falcon, we extend concepts of higher education institutional change to transborder events that seek equity and social justice, while providing a roadmap for navigating the material border itself, fully acknowledging its policing and repression. Thus, while certainly informed by critical educational theory, our framework features practical guidelines drawn directly from the experiential knowledge of transborder members, as well as our university's geographical location, just minutes from the U.S. Mexico border.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lopez. So just to recap and revisit the model, to begin, this is a transborder initiative in and of itself in practice, but also in how it was ignited, meaning that it was ignited by our transborder community, by transborder people, and really by at a grassroots level at the time with An idea, of course, informed significantly by research and also practice and organizing that I have experienced within the last 10 years, but also connecting with my colleague here, Gilberto Profe Reyes, who is also transfronterizo from the Imperial Valley Mexicali border region, and ignited at the grassroots level, and if by and for the transborder community. This is a transborder initiative, and more specifically, of course, a transborder graduation. Paramount in the inception of this graduation, but also in the establishing systems of support, were our transborder capital, also navigating international bureaucracies, of course, on both sides of the border, and our transborder allies who are here today, and our campus and community leaders. And of course, also all of these factors led to the systems of support necessary to successfully execute this graduation. So we'll go over each of these components here in a moment.
All right, so before I begin talking about Transborder Capital, my name is Gilberto Reyes, Dr. Vanessa Falcón said. I am from Mexicali, El Centro. All my life have lived between two borders, and I'm proud of it. And thanks to Vane, I've learned so much about this word transfronterizo, which I've always was part of it, but I didn't know. So transborder capital, first of all, means to navigate into both societies, into both communities. Like I said, como soy transfronterizo, me crié en las dos comunidades, ¿no? Es navegar en las dos comunidades, en el Valle Imperial y Mexicali, usar los dos idiomas y usar el lenguaje que se usa en las dos comunidades, the language that is used in both communities, but also to connect, to show that this border is just a physical border, but it connects both societies. And due to this navigation of both communities, right, and due to the people that I know that are in the art community, I got to do to connect with Omar. For example, here he is. When Doctora Falcón came to me one day, talked about this graduation, we passed by la Casa de la Cultura y dijo, no estuviera bien hacer una graduación aquí en la Casa de la Cultura para nuestros alumnex transfronterizos. And I immediately called a good friend of mine who's in the art world, que está en el mundo del arte, y me dijo, ok, para eso tenemos que hablarle a Omar. Y ella me contactó con Omar, y de ahí empezó una amistad y una relación con Omar, ¿no? Ya después con Imacum, ya después con ABC, ¿no? Transborder capital means that, to navigate both worlds, to use the language, to know the culture of both worlds, but also to conectar.
Thank you, Profe Reyes. And hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Fitch, pronouns he, him, and él. I am a master's candidate at CSU Long Beach. I'm also a Sally Casanova predoctoral scholar. And today I'll present about the second component of our model, which is navigating international and internal bureaucracies. This second component basically fosters the building of relationships that Professor Reyes was just talking about, the use of the transborder capital, putting it in action, and also the understanding and use of our positionalities in the world. Knowing and learning how to navigate the bureaucracies is instrumental to implement an initiative like this one. We have strategically positioned ourselves in the different roles that we had within higher education, whether that was as a faculty, as a director, professors, or student leaders, and how those positions helped us to navigate the bureaucracy that we face in the implementation of this initiative. The navigation of international and internal bureaucracies included the power of storytelling, which partook an important role in the advocacy efforts. As you can see in the screen, there is a quote to your right, which represents the way that I utilize my voice and my advocacy, including my story, for emotional connection and to further get support from stakeholders in higher education, but also abroad in the international bureaucracy. I'll read the quote. It says, Carlos Ming, then prospective graduate with deported parents, utilized his position as the student body president to advocate for the transborder graduation, including funding. He remembers telling his mother, "Mom, Ma, puede que hagan una graduación en Mexicali." The English translation is, "Mom, maybe they'll do a graduation in Mexicali," while restricting his optimism due to the institutional constraints of international programming. Bureaucracy in this case was also not just in higher education institution. As we note in the model, it was in an international manner as well. Dr. Falcon Horta sent various invitation letters to Mexican government officials to leverage that support, as Mexicali's mayor, Norma Bustamante, and the governor of the state of Baja California, Maestra Marinel Pilar, and the Secretary of Education, who contacted and expressed their interest in supporting and attending the Building Bridges graduation. You can see that in the larger picture to the right of your screen. And the last picture that you see on there, which is also another way of navigating bureaucracies, specifically in the financial support, was through external or additional organizations associated with the university. That's a copy of the minutes from associated students of San Diego State Imperial Valley who voted on April 25th, 2022 in favor of supporting the initiative financially. To conclude, this component of the model integrates what Professor Reyes just talked about, which is transborder capital, but it also integrates an emotionally driven advocacy and linguistic proficiency in Spanish as necessary pieces for communicating and collaborating with the Mexican government and with officials from external organizations in the process of navigating all of these bureaucracies and see the initiative come into fruition.
And on that note, and it's very true that all these really overlap, right? I'm going to talk briefly about transborder student allies. Through Pláticas, we noted the value of allies in implementing the graduation. Allyship led to kinship across the collective of staff, community members, friends, and families who built and organized the ceremony. Allyship here draws in part from Brown and Ostrov, who theorized the way dominant groups can work to eradicate prejudice in their professional lives and relinquish social privilege through their support of non-dominant groups. Like the graduation's title, allies and organizers built bridges amongst themselves during every phase leading up to the event. And I kind of can personally reflect on this. As a non-transborder tenure track professor, I learned that building student-focused events of this magnitude involves decentering myself. In other words, sometimes as a professor, I'm used to being a store of knowledge, but in this particular role, I was not necessarily that. Nevertheless, my position did allow me to help in some very specific ways, such as the ease by which I can contact and network with other professors, communicate with students to help promotion, along with advocating for the event through all the committees I was involved with, such as the Faculty Council. Allies can also offer strategic help in navigating internal institutional dynamics and for problem solving for the benefit of the event. And on a very practical level, allies can help with funding, especially in cases where you need upfront deposits, where the funding hasn't come in yet. Overall, allyship and kinship were crucial components that bolstered the communication between the organizers and built trust for open discussion and collective decision-making, which I think is very key. It was a very key material component of the allyship and kinship we had, was the collective decision-making. So the involvement of tenure track and other position administration helped build and organize the event. And this combination of collectivity and of allyship ensured that the event maintained its trans-border student focus.
Okay, so all of these factors were important to developing systems of support for this first ever trans-border graduation. And the most paramount systems of support to successfully implement a trans-border graduation are three. And those are to have the funding. And to have the funding, you of course need institutional support. Secondly, it's to the venue, specifically in Mexico. And then thirdly, the capital, more specifically that transborder capital, ideally the workforce, the people that are dedicated to carrying this event out, because it's no easy task to cross borders, and even not any easier is it to do events, initiatives, and here in this case, a transborder graduation. So those are the most important factors. We need a lot. It's not limited to only those three. But if we were to say, based on our analysis, our pláticas, our photo voice of this event, if we were to say what is the most important systems of support to successfully execute a transporter graduation, it's those three, which are a venue, the funding, and the people dedicated to actually carrying this work out. And this graduation would not have been possible without the support of our campus leaders. Not just campus leaders, but also allies, transporter student allies in this initiative. And our campus leaders collectively are nationally renowned scholars. They are community civic leaders in the Imperial Valley Mexicali border region, as well as the San Diego-Tijuana border region. They are award-winning educators dedicated to the social justice of underserved student communities in education. And I don't have enough time to just say how amazing our campus leaders are, but just to emphasize and just reiterate that, again, this initiative could not have been possible without their support, and without their support at the forefront of this initiative, not just during the inception phase, which was in May of 2022, but also in the expansion of this initiative. Now, just as of recently, in the summer of May 2023, serving our transporter students at the SDSU San Diego's main campus, and serving transporter students in the San Diego-Tijuana borderland. Therefore, collectively, uniting and serving our transporter students along the Baja California borderlands. So our campus leaders are our panelists for today's session, and we're going to ask a series of questions. And these questions, I'll ask them in English and in Spanish. And for our panelists, you are welcome to answer these questions in English or Spanish, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And you have 2 minutes to respond each question. Everybody will have 2 questions that we will address in today's panel. And our first question, nuestra primera pregunta para nuestros panelistas es para Susana y Omar. Y nuestra pregunta es que si nos pueden platicar, si nos pueden contar sobre su experiencia, su primera experiencia en la graduación. ¿Cómo fue para ustedes? ¿Cómo se sintieron el día del evento? So this question is for our panelists, Susana Lopez and Omar Romero Godoy. If you could tell us about your experience during the inaugural Building Bridges graduation, what was it like for you? How did you feel during the event?
Pues yo creo que primero Susana, ¿no? Bueno, ¿me escucho?
Hi, yes. Well, as far as my experience, being a member of this committee was an extraordinary honor and privilege. It was an incredible experience to work with such a dedicated and passionate group of individuals who shared the same goal of positively impacting the group of individuals of our students and their families. Witnessing the fruits of our collective labor coming together was an enriching experience. We worked really hard on the project, and it was rewarding to see the results. What was it like for me? Well, as the event approached, I began to feel increasingly anxious. I had been tasked with ordering the tickets, the programs, and ensuring that all the vendors were paid on time. It was a lot of responsibility, and I knew that even a tiny mistake would have an enormous consequence. So I had to double check my work. How did I feel the day of the event? To be honest, on the day of the event, I felt like a wedding planner. I did a lot of behind the scenes work. I was a primary contact for the vendors. So on the morning of the event, I was responsible for paying and coordinating with the decorators, the caterers, the photographers, and the mariachi. and to ensure that everything went according to plan. And as the event progressed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and satisfaction as I watched everything come together. However, towards the end of the day, my feet were aching from all the running around I had done. That's when I realized that I should have worn flats instead of heels, and I made a mental note so that next year I wear flats.
Gracias, Susana. Y ahora, Omar, si es posible, si no, no hay problema, regresamos, pero platícanos, ¿cómo fue para ti el día del evento o quizás los días que antes del evento? Tenemos que reconocer que gracias a Omar fue que tuvimos el espacio para poder hacer la graduación por la primera vez. Omar made that connection with the Mexican government to be able to sponsor the venue for the first ever Building Bridges graduation in Mexicali at Casa de la Cultura Mexicali.
¿Sí se escucha?
Sí, te escuchamos.
Ok, se escucha, se mira. Lo que pasa es que me falló la tecnología y entonces desde el teléfono.
No hay
Ok,
problema.
va a ser en español mi participación, ¿eh?
Claro que sí, bienvenido.
Ok, thank you. Bueno, pues para mí fue una experiencia muy grata encontrarme primero con el maestro Gilberto, que me presentó a la doctora Falcon, y escucharla con ese sueño que nos compartió de realizar este proyecto binacional, de esta graduación, el deseo de tener una graduación transfronteriza. Y bueno, nos sumamos a hacer posible, como hada madrina, nos juntamos a ayudar este deseo de la doctora Falcon, que era no nomás un deseo de ella, sino algo que quería compartir con una experiencia con los estudiantes que tuvieran esta graduación. Ya para el día del evento, realmente ahí vivimos, sentimos realmente lo importante que era este evento, que para algunas personas podría ser muy simple, pero estaba llena de una energía, de muchos sentimientos. El observar desde el escenario, me tocó estar arriba del escenario como invitado, y observar a una familia de una de los estudiantes cargando la fotografía de su abuelo, que creo que acaba de fallecer, y familias que estaban llorando por la emoción, porque ellos no podrían pasar a Estados Unidos a ser parte de este gran evento de la vida de los estudiantes. Así que fue algo académico, pero sobre todo fue algo de mucho sentimiento, de una gran energía, de energía esa positiva, sobre todo ahorita que estamos en tiempos de mucha violencia. Es un mensaje de paz esto que se hizo. Cuando vemos que los políticos la frontera la están cerrando con discursos de odio, los estudiantes y las autoridades de la Universidad de San Diego, Estatal de San Diego, lo que hicieron fue darle vida a este proyecto Naciones.
Gracias, Omar. And now we're going to go on to our second question. And this question is for our campus leaders. What advice would you give to other campus leaders at the U.S. Mexico Borderlands who are in a similar role than you, who are dean of students, chief officers in HSI affairs, presidents of international affairs? What advice would you give them for those campus leaders who are interested in implementing a similar initiative in their institutions? And just to present here once again, our campus leaders, we are joined with Doctora Cristina Alfaro, Associate Vice President for International Affairs, Dr. Henry Villegas, Dean of Students at SDSU Imperial Valley, and Emilio Ullola, Dr. Emilio Ullola, Associate Chief Diversity Officer for HSI and Regional Affairs at SDSU. And these are our campus leaders who supported this initiative and who provided systems of support for the success of the Building Bridges graduation, not just for the first time in May 2022, but also in the expansion of this initiative along the Baja California borderlands. So with no further ado, I open up the platform to your insights. And we'll start with Doctora Alfaro.
Hello. Thank you so much for all of those that have presented, just to kind of set the stage and to introduce a model. I think that's one of the first things that I was going to say. We need a model. It's always important to have a roadmap, a strategic plan that's going to help us. But I also wanted to say that I am from Calexico and was born also on the border. First Street. You can't get any closer to the border than that. I was born and raised there. So this work, you know, it's and I know that many of you that are here today are coming back to your roots, right, and being able to really act on the experiences that you yourself had and the challenges. So it's very exciting to be here today. But and thank you so much for the model. I think it's definitely something that's going to help us, because when you want to present something, and you know, we're talking about sustainability, if you don't have a model, if you don't have, you know, objectives and, you know, the way that your assessments for how you're going to do this, it's really hard to get full institutional support. So I would say that that's the first step, and it's already been done. And I think it's going to be an evolving model, I would imagine, right, as we continue to learn and as we continue to dialogue. But I think that as we move forward, it's really important to have very strategic communication with the president and the provost, you know, so that they really understand the importance of this. I think back of Vanessa when she was a doctoral student at San Diego State. And at that time, she was like, we should have a transborder graduation. And I know that her idea was even then. And then, of course, to have gone to San Diego Imperial Valley, San Diego State Imperial Valley to do this. And I know when I participated in the first graduation, I was very moved. I was like, we need to do this at Mesa campus, right? So we started the excitement over here. But I think that what's really important, that was already, I think it was Gilberto that said this, aligning to the university strategic plan, right? Especially as an HSI. I think that in a lot of the work that we do, that's really important to always stay aligned to the strategic plan. And the other thing, I think that it's very important to have the AS president, and I think that that's where Carlos was so supportive for their first graduation. And over here at San Diego Mesa, we were also able to get the support from the associate vice president and the president, as well as the cabinet, to be able to do this. So because it is transborder, I think that a key thing that we need to continue to do and expand is our relationships with the universities across the border. And I think about this because, you know, we had ours at UABC last year. And I recall right now that someone said que es un acto de paz. I think that was Omar. Me gusta lo que dijiste, un acto de paz. El rector de UABC, cuando le pedimos este espacio para poder hacerlo aquí, dijo, ese es un acto noble, you know. So it was just really beautiful to see that people are really able to hone in on the impact and the importance of this. And so hearing those comments, and I would think that it would be really important to continue to work with universities to expand the knowledge, and to expand and receive the support from other people. Also, along with keeping everybody involved, is just working very strategically with your different colleges. You know, I think that we can do more to bring deans along, to bring associate deans along, to bring department chairs along, to really understand and promote the importance of this, because I'm sure, Vanessa, we learned from you and Miriam, who I know is going to speak in a little bit. And we were saying, how do you find out who's transborder and transborder students, right? And just how do we begin to get this communication out as something very positive, something that you want to identify as? Anyway, so there's more work to be done. I think if we can focus on that, that would be really good. As far as the sustainability of something like this, it's really important to have a leader that is going to be able to make decisions, right? That we don't always have to be like, okay, let's check and see, and then it takes a few months to get the feedback. But how can we put at the forefront someone that is in leadership that's going to be able to say, that's a good idea, let's do it, let's move on, we'll find the money or we'll find the support. But I think that those are really key. The last thing that I was going to mention, just something for us to think about, because when Miriam and I were organizing the transborder graduation here last year, high schools contacted us. Transborder students from high schools were saying, can we be part of your graduation, because they heard about it. So one of the first things that I did was, of course, we were already over limit. We couldn't really invite anyone else, but we thought, okay, this is something that high schools and superintendents and districts need to think about, especially in Mexicali, right? Where, and Calexico, and also over here, we have a lot of our border schools in San Isidro and Chula Vista. So I contacted at that time the superintendent, for the county superintendent, to let him know what we were doing, and also that there's a lot of interest. And of course, you know that Southwestern College also had their transborder graduation. So it's really getting a lot of momentum. People are really starting to recognize how important this is. But now we have to help the high schools. That's another topic. I think that we're going to have continued conversations. But let's think about, how do we support our high school students that are also transborder students? I'll stop there because I know that there's others that are going to speak, and I'll just chime in later. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Alfaro. And now for Dr. Villegas, what advice would you give to another dean of students at the Borderlands who also wants to implement a transborder graduation, perhaps maybe at their cross-cultural center, or just overall? What would you tell them?
I'm going to do my best to try to keep this under 2 minutes, but I'm probably going to fail. I just want to warn you in advance. First of all, I just want to thank you all in terms of for being here, and also in terms of for being in this space. And I want to also thank Dr. Falcon and the committee in terms of for organizing this event. I know it takes a lot of time, and again, just great job, and happy to be here in this space today. So in terms of the advice that I would give, is, it's like, as I thought about how this first started, one of the first pieces, as a leader, it would be to listen and then feed the passion. This was Doctora Falcon's idea. She, I remember when we first started to meet, we hired her. That was one of the great moves that I've made as a leader. And that was hiring Doctora Falcon to be our cross-cultural center coordinator. And then, we were sitting in these spaces, and one of the things that I charged her with, when she first stepped on campus, was we need to get students involved. We need to get students engaged on these important initiatives here on our campus. And as we started to talk about these things, she was telling me about this transborder graduation commencement. I'd never heard of it before. It was, and then so the first piece of advice that I gave her is to form a committee, but don't try to do this by yourself. I fed her passion and told her, you know what, let's find a way to get this done. Let me know what you need from me, and we'll do this together. And she enlisted a great group of champions. I see him here in the space. I see Fred, I see Gilberto, I see Carlos, I see some of the others that were involved in this in terms of from the very beginning, and this thing just grew. It's one of those things that you can't do it alone, and I know that Vanessa knows that, because she relied on the amazing team and all the other volunteers. I see Susana here and some of those other folks that have been involved as well. And I think back to And I think I gave this piece of advice to Carlos a long time ago when he was AS president, but it's an African proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's what she did. She was able to kind of bring together a group and a team. I know that they fed on each other, the energy they fed on each other, and they were able to do some amazing things in terms of that commencement in Mexicali was amazing in terms of both of them. And again, you know, like just to be a part of that was huge. And so again, I think that's the first piece is doing that. And then I would also say the other piece is the organization of this all. It's great, you know, like in terms of to have the idea, to have the vision for this, but then how do you do this? I remember Vanessa coming in our regular meetings, you know, what's the structure? How do you do this? And, you know, how do you do a graduation? I know she knew what she wanted to do, but in terms of the organization, and we were able to align with the structure that they use for the commencement in San Diego, and then all the other commencement celebrations that we have, whether it's the EOP graduation celebration, the Guardian Scholars also has a graduation celebration, the Lavender graduation that we've done here on our campus as well. So just kind of taking that structure and giving her that structure, and then she took it back to the committee, and they were able to run. They were able to run with it. So again, just aligning with those, and the other thing, and I think that Dr. Alfaro mentioned as well, you know, I mean, it's nice if you have all these ideas and everything, but if you don't have the funding, really, it's hard to make it happen. And we were very fortunate in terms of to be able to work with the president's office in terms of to secure the funding. And also, I know Dr. Falcon was able to ask around in terms of for anybody that might be willing to, in terms of to help support this effort. And so again, just aligning those things with what was happening already, and really finding others in terms of other champions on your campus, in your community, on your staff. Even I see some staff members here from Student Affairs. I see some folks from in terms of from SDSU Imperial Valley, but also our partners in San Diego as well. You know, just everybody working together in terms of to help to make this this vision a reality. So those are my pieces of advice in terms of for a leader. It's just you know, like I mentioned earlier, it's listen and then feed the passion, and then the importance of working together and finding those other champions, and then using that energy in terms of making this all happen. So those are my pieces of advice.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. And that was faculty director. My role was faculty director, not coordinator. And I couldn't have asked for a better boss than Dr. Villegas. Since I first presented this idea to Dean Villegas, he really provided with, you know, the guidance and support needed to make this event successful. So thank you for that. Now for our panelist, Emilio Ullola. So same question for you, Dr. Ullola. What advice would you give to another associate chief diversity officer of HSI Affairs, Regional Affairs at the Borderlands? What advice would you give them if they want to implement a similar initiative, transborder graduation in their higher education institutions?
Thank you, Doctora Falcon. First of all, thank you for trusting to have me on this panel and to speak to what I think we've gleaned from this. I want to say welcome to, or hello to everyone from the Imperial Valley as well. I'm from Centro Spartans. I hope that doesn't ruin my time here. I know Dr. Alfaro is already giving me dirty looks now. So I think that it's important to recognize a couple of things in the answer that I'm going to provide. One is that the Calexico Mexicali initiative now has 2 years of experience under its belt. The San Diego Tijuana initiative has 1 year of experience under its belt. And I think observationally, that's 3 collective years of experience from which we can glean a couple of important things that we know are working and a couple of things that we know we need to try and work on. I'll be succinct in my answer here. I think one of the things that we've learned collectively is the importance of communicating to our administration and to our communications folks, the rationale behind what we're doing, and the importance and scope and reach of something like this. I mentioned to my colleagues how there are several things that are happening in the HSI space at SDSU that are garnering us attention nationally. But the Transborder graduation is the one that has corazón, right? It's the one that really seems to connect with people in terms of an example of a meaningful initiative that truly does serve our students. Now, it's a specific population of our students, but it is a warm and tangible example of that effort. Along those lines, I think what we've also learned is that it's very helpful for us to be open to unlearning what we normally do when we think about graduations, right? That we can shake the cognitive shackles of a practice and tradition that isn't ours necessarily. And we can do that by making sure we check in with our students and that we reaffirm our own goals about what we're trying to accomplish here and use that to guide the details in the planning. What's truly important? What are we trying to accomplish? And then that becomes the focus, so we don't get hung up on things that aren't necessarily a reflection of our own people and our own culture, right? That also provides us with some flexibility in terms of how we can accomplish our goals. And of course, it helps us to do something that makes sense for our students in particular. And then lastly, we have to really try to transition from trying something, from piloting something, from being, putting something out there that's innovative. I know this is going to seem controversial, but to something that is sustainable and institutionalized and more boring because it's part of what we do all the time, right? There are some avenues that we are hoping to try and explore toward that end. But what I would suggest, and again, this might be the social scientist in me, is that we double down on the way that we collect data that helps us to tell our story here. We can talk about numbers, number of students who were interested, number of students who actually showed, number of family members that they indicated would welcome an opportunity like that. We can gather qualitative data about their experiences and make sure we document it well. That helps us tell the story and double down on the importance of this. And we can talk and we can express by the importance of this by documenting the coverage and the reach that the events like these are having. I think that it was very inspiring in Mexicali, Dr. Falcon, to see you gleaning the opportunity for interviews with the press and and also in the Tijuana one, Dr. Alfaro and Miriam as well, to try and get as much coverage as possible in the moment. And I just think that those are things that help toward the long-term goal of institutionalizing and normalizing the event as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights. And now moving on to the same question on the advice to campus leaders, we have Maribel Madero, campus administrator for finance and operations services at SDSU Imperial Valley, and Miriam Castañón, director of student success initiatives at SDSU. And our question to you is the same question, which is what advice would you give to other campus leaders who are in a similar role as you, who want to implement a transborder graduation in their higher education institution? So Maribel, what would you tell a campus administrator who is in charge of leading financial affairs, finance affairs, operation services, all of that very complicated and really hard work in their campus, who want to take on now the task of doing a transborder graduation? What would you tell them?
Thank you, Dr. Falcon, for first of all inviting me to be part of this panel. A great initiative that I can say that I'm part of it, and being as a border town, born and raised in this border Mexicali, Calexico, it is an honor to be part of this. Thank you. And as you mentioned, I pretty much oversee the finance and operations of the Imperial Valley campus, and my job it was supporting Dr. Falcon in this initiative in making sure that the fund that she was successfully received from different institutions or different departments, that the funds were able to pretty much transfer over or be on the vendor's pocket, right? Because vendors will provide that service to the graduation in Mexicali. And I think the biggest advice that I can give to anybody who is under my role on any other institution is communication with the event organizer, a good budget, to have already a good budget for the event, having a very good idea of the expenses that you anticipate for the graduation. And I know is a little bit challenging because we're talking the funding is in dollars, maybe some of the expenses are in pesos, so there are challenges there. And also to have a good rationale as to why are we doing this, what's the benefit to the students, what's the benefit to the university is very important from the finance point of view, to have a good rationale and justify every single expense that we have for any event. But in this particular one, with these transborder graduations, when we have dollars and pesos involved. So those are the three topics that I will I will advise to anyone who is in my role. But at the same time, one of the keys, like Dr. Emilio Yo was talking about, that we have already 3 years of experience under combined as an institution having this event. We need to also think about what we can learn from it, and there are different ways, at least in my area, that I think we can learn from this. And from the first to the second graduation, I think one of the best things that we learn is that let's have a good communication also with the vendors, and have the vendors provide us with their quotes and their invoices in dollars. I think in dollar amounts. Some of them they're able to do it, some of them there aren't. But for those that are able to give us a quote and invoice in dollar, that helps tremendously on the finance part of point of view in pretty much processing payments for them. But like I said, yes, those are my main topics. And thank you, Dr. Falcon, for inviting me to this panel.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Maribel. Just a quick question. How about also wearing flats? Would you also recommend that? Do you think that's important as well?
Definitely, like Susana Lopez mentioned, working on that back and forth on the day of the event and running from one side to another. Yes, definitely wearing flats is a must.
And just to emphasize here the brilliance and brilliance that we have here in our panel, Maribel Madero really supported us during the first graduation, and now the second one. The finances are difficult to. It's a difficult topic. International transborder finances, even more difficult. So, hats off to Maribel. And now the same question to Miriam Castañón, and also emphasizing just the brilliance that we have in this panel again. Miriam, support, and also Dr. Alfaro, and supported and now expanding this initiative along the borderlands, not just serving our transborder students in the Imperial Valley Mexicali border region, but in the San Diego Tijuana border region as well. And the question to you, to Miriam Castañón, Director of Student Success Initiatives at SDSU, is the same question. Miriam, what advice would you give to another director of student success services in another higher education institution at the borderlands? Maybe it's in Arizona, maybe it's in El Paso. What would you tell them if they want to do this for the first time?
Thank you, Dr. Falcon. Give me 1 second. Okay. Can you hear me well? Thank you, Dr. Falcon, for inviting me to be in this panel, not only for that, but for your vision for creating this trans-border graduation. I was born and raised in Mexicali, Baja California, and I'm a Transfronterizx, so I know the struggle of all of our students that have been not able to celebrate with their loved ones. I've seen it day in, day out, having worked at San Diego State for now 29 years, but 22 of those at the Imperial Valley campus. So my heart, when I see Maribel's and Dr. Nunez's background with the art gallery, my heart gets warm and fuzzy. So for me in my role, I think that I was invited to join this trans-border graduation from the San Diego campus, not in my particular role, but I think with my particular skill sets, right? And I think that I don't want to repeat everything that my colleagues have said, because that is, for the sake of time, but I think that that's the basis, right? That's the high level information that has been already shared. That's like the basics. My role was the logistics. So what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? And how we're going to execute it? To do that well, you have to have a team, a committee that will be representative of different areas from campus. So from your faculty, from your students, you have to have team members from student affairs, from faculty affairs and academic affairs, a diverse group of members that can be able to provide perspective, ideas and suggestions, and also support, not only for the planning, but also the execution of the day of the event, right? I think that having that is the first step in order for you to be able to have the question was like a successful trans-border graduation. I feel that we were very fortunate that we had our colleagues from U.S, which were helping us along the way with many of the logistical parts, from the venue, with the parking and translation, photography. So we were truly blessed in our inaugural trans-border graduation to have that. Now we need to, in order to, continue this and make it, obviously we've outgrown the space, we've outgrown many things. So we need to start thinking strategically what we're going to be doing next year in order to make it a sustainable graduation, right? So we are still probably going to be working with our colleagues, like Dr. Falcon had said, and early, but we most likely will not be able to have it at U.S for the space, because we're already capped. But I think from my seat, I think you need to be able to have an idea. And like, if I were going to tell someone in my role, right, like the logistics, and like Susana mentioned, yes, the wearing the flats, true, but definitely the planning and everything. You have to have someone with for example, for the script, with a great set of eyesight, like editing skills, to make sure that the script is on point. The program also has to be, timed perfectly, so your students come in and we do the recession within the time frame, right? We have to have people with different skill sets that will allow us to have a smooth graduation. Everything from the people from sound, the people that are going to help us with being with, if we're going to have aperitivos or the music. So everything. I think that, like I said, we had an amazing committee, and I would recommend a very strong committee with a very diverse group of people that can provide different ideas and suggestions. So thank you.
Thank you, Miriam, Maribel, for your insights and brilliance. So this question is also for our campus leaders, and here this question is, and if we have 2 minutes, if we could answer the question in under 2 minutes. And that is, what recommendation would you give campus leaders to establish a sustainable transporter graduation in their institutions as a long-lasting initiative for the future? So, you know, for whether it's for us or for other campus leaders at the Borderlands, what advice would you give them to make this graduation not just an event, you know, first annual, second annual, third annual, but a long-lasting initiative that will serve transborder students in years to come? And we'll start with Doctora Alfaro.
Okay, so I'll make it really quick, but when Maribel was talking about finances, we already know, right? We need the financial support. I think we can't say that enough. But another thing that we need, and we're seeing this issue with the Reborder Conference right now, as well as when we work with our colleagues from Oaxaca, we need a bank in Mexico. We need to have a bank account in Mexico. That would really help us to, you know, just address so many of the problems, you know, that people have to wait for their payment, or we're doing, like, who was it that said that you have to pay ahead of time from your own pocket? Vanessa, I think you did that. I remember the first graduation was like, you shouldn't be doing that. But it's like, well, then how else could we do it, right? So we find ways, because somos luchadores, we find ways to get this done. But really, if it's going to be sustainable, which is part of the question that you just asked, then we need to really think how we do business on both sides of the border. So this is something that I think I would want to definitely push for. I see Maribel nodding her head, and I know Miriam too was dealing with a lot of this. So that's one. The second one is one of the things that happened as we were working with our students from the Mesa campus, I started to realize how the gifts that these students have, particularly our transborder students, which they are bilingual heritage, you know, Spanish, English speakers, right? So at that time, I had just received a grant from the California Department of Education for 2030 Multilingual California. So I said, okay, these are the perfect students that should be receiving this. And I remember we put the question out there and say, like, how many of you are bilingual? And everybody raised it. Remember, Miriam, everybody was on the screen and they're all going, of course. They live, you know, we live in 2 languages. We live in 2 cultures. So anyway, I'd like to really not only focus on the border, you know, the border crossing, you know, the lived experience, but on the assets that these students already have, and really promote that these students are going to be graduating with their biliteracy badges and certificates and LinkedIn. So that's an area that I think would, because you got to bring in, it's not just the crossing of the border. It's really focusing on the assets that these students have. And they were so proud. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let others share their ideas. But I think that would really help it to make it sustainable. Gracias.
Maribel, same question to you. And that is, you know, what advice would you give to other campus leaders who want to make this initiative sustainable for the future and years to come?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Dr. Alfaro in having be able to conduct business in Mexico or have a bank account in Mexico. That will facilitate things a lot in terms of having the graduation in Mexicali. And making it sustainable. I know grants can be temporary, and there's some funding, department funding can be temporary. So if we're looking into a long-term event or graduation, I think we need to have an institutional funding, or baseline funding that can support this event. And just the same way that we're doing it for our normal graduation, where we have baseline funding for that, the same, I feel like the same process, the same protocol needs to follow this event in order to make it a sustainable event. But having that funding being transferred to a Mexico bank or an account over there to facilitate payments, that would be phenomenal.
We'll work on it.
Thank you. I really like that idea.
Thank you, Maribel. And Miriam, what advice do you have on sustainability for other
Yes.
campus leaders who want to do the same?
Yes, I think that we can all agree in that funding is one of the biggest ones, right? But I think from my seat again is having a position that has this in their role as an assigned duty. Because right now, all of us that have been working are doing as whether it's co-chair or committee members, and that's okay. We did it. It's working for right now. But if we're talking about institutionalizing, ideally, it would be having someone that has this in their role, so they're planning and doing this as a yearly thing. The second thing would be to have a plus would be to have this person to have Sentry. Because going back and forth to the border and making sure that we're using our time wisely, it's a plus. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely a plus. Thank you.
Dr. Villegas, and what advice do you have for other campus leaders on the sustainability of an initiative like this one?
Yeah, again, very similar to what the others have said, is really finding a permanent funding source. So right now it's one of those things. The president, has been very gracious in terms of supporting the event, but when she's gone, you could have different leadership. That's happening right now in student affairs. A lot of the things that Dr. Luke Woods was supportive of, now we're waiting for the new VP and see if they're going to support it as well. So again, just trying to find a permanent funding source in terms of a line item where it's actually allocated to this, and there's a little bit more assurance that it's going to be happening every year, or perhaps maybe a corporate sponsor in terms of to write the event. I'm sure there's someone out there, a company, whether it's Univision or another company out there, that's really interested in events like this and getting them to underwrite this as a corporate sponsor, and I think that would be helpful. And then the other thing is really the thing that Miriam had mentioned is institutionalize it also as well in terms of a position. It should be a part of somebody's PD in terms of, hey, you're responsible for overseeing the coordination of the building bridges commencement or graduation celebration event in Mexicali. I mean, like perfect example, Vanessa. Right now, I know when the fact that you're no longer the cross-cultural center faculty director, but if you would have went somebody else, like somewhere else to another school, who knows what would have happened with that. Luckily, you're staying here, and so this is still going to happen. But if you would have left to another institution, I don't think that anyone else had that passion, and it could have went away because it was your project. But it's definitely a project that's very important to us all, and so finding a way to institutionalize that into someone's position, like Miriam stated earlier.
Luckily, we made it a signature event for the Cross-Cultural Center. So hopefully when we have our new person, they will have the brilliance and skills and transborder capital to carry it out.
So, friend, did you hear that? We got to find somebody that can do that.
Heard it loud and clear.
We have our orders.
And same question for Dr. Ulloa on the topic of sustainability for an initiative like this one, a transporter graduation. Advice to campus leaders, not just for us, but for others who want to do the same work at the Borderlands. What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me go last, and thank you to all my colleagues for stealing all of the good answers. So what I think I can do is maybe just kind of expand on some of the things that people said and add a little bit of context. Indeed, I think from our seat, we don't want to be playing hot potato for responsibility here. We want to make sure that it's clear about where the program sits, that it's institutionalized, that it's written into the expectations of an individual. But here's what I would add. It needs to be tied to a position, not to a person. That people change jobs, people get promoted, people leave. If it's tied, as you all did, to a position or an office or both, that's one of the keys to sustainability. Indeed, funding issues are critical, and carrying over what we've learned from one iteration to the next is critical. So documenting some of these best practices is important. I think this forum in and of itself is an example of doing that. And I would say to add to Dr. Villegas' comment about underwriters, for some reason, I think development doesn't like the word sponsors. But I would say that our ability to bring development into the conversation and to be creative about having them serve as partners in supporting this event so that it can be institutionalized, so that it does exist in the department or unit's allocation, and that we frame it as an opportunity for organizations, nonprofits, corporate alike, or other institutions of higher learning as an opportunity for them to participate and partner with us and to serve our students with money. But of course, to help us sustain this effort to serving our students and being a true trans-border Hispanic serving institution.
Absolutely, Dr. Yola, thank you for your insights, and overall, thank you for our panelists' insights on the importance of institutionalizing this initiative, not just for the third annual, but really for years to come, and the importance of having this initiative with the support of our institution, not only with a task that an individual can do, but actually supported through a specific role. Now we're going to go on to our closing thoughts for this panel of our campus leaders and community allies in this forum. And this question is for Susana Lopez, Administrative Support Coordinator and Student Affairs, Student Health in the Student Health Division at SEC Pura Valley. And also for Omar Romero Godoy, former coordinator for the Cultural Affairs at Baja California. And we want to ask, what are some concluding thoughts, closing remarks that you have in your experience in this panel, but also in your experience in supporting this initiative?
Well, I want to say that it is humbling to know that we played a key role in creating something that would have a positive impact on the lives of so many people. Our actions served as a model and motivated others to follow suit. Being a part of this committee was an experience I will always cherish. It was a small but mighty group, and it couldn't have been possible without the fierce leadership of Doctora Falcón and, of course, all the campus leaders. Maribel, thank you for your patience. And Dr. Villegas, thank you for not bothering me during that time. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, and I look forward to the next event.
Thank you, Susana. Y ahora abrimos la última pregunta para nuestros líderes de la comunidad, pero también aliados de esta iniciativa. Y aquí ya la última pregunta es para Omar Romero Godoy. Y Omar, hay algunos pensamientos que gustes compartir o comentarios para cerrar esta sesión del panel de este foro.
Primero quiero saber si me veo, porque ya después leí que estaba con la cámara al revés. ¿Sí me veo? ¿Sí me escucho? Ok, perfecto.
Te ves muy bien.
Gracias, hola, saludos. Pues para mí es algo muy importante el que continúe que ya sea una tradición, porque eso es lo que estamos creando, no nomás historia, sino también una tradición. Espero, he escuchado de algunas escuelas, sobre todo universidades particulares, que tienen la intención de hacer algo semejante. Escuché hace unos meses, que la de la del Paso, Texas, la Universidad del Paso, Texas, también tenía esa intención, precisamente porque habían escuchado lo que había pasado acá en Mexicali, en Baja California. Así que, pues, de eso se trata, que las nuevas generaciones, los jóvenes, hagan el cambio, y este tipo de proyectos que son motivados por toda una institución, por los académicos, por los decanos, por el área administrativa, que las sociedades de los alumnos, o sea, que todos en conjunto, más las familias, sigan haciendo esto, va a cambiar mucho la narrativa de las relaciones fronterizas, sobre todo desde el lado académico. Me da mucho gusto que la Universidad Autónoma de Baja California ya se sumó a este proyecto con la graduación que hubo este año, porque ya con eso, esto ya nada nos para. Y te agradezco mucho, doctora Falcon, por haberme compartido tu sueño y sobre todo a todas y todos los estudiantes que en estas dos graduaciones han pasado por esta experiencia. Mis bendiciones para todos. Gracias.
Gracias, Omar. Y bueno, ahora vamos a el cierre de esta sesión. And now we're going to go to the closing remarks of this session. And specifically, they're going to be focused on testimonies from our Building Bridges graduates. And after their testimonies, we're going to open up the floor for questions. And this section is going to be moderated by Carlos Vich.
Thank you. I'm trying to put everyone on the screen.
Okay.
No, I think it's done. Thank you, Dr. Falcon. So this section is titled Testimonials from our Building Bridges graduates. So just a few minutes before Dr. Ulloa mentioned about the social sciences kicking in, and that's why we wanted to provide a space for our graduates to talk about their lives, to provide their testimonials. So just to talk a little bit about the testimonials that Andrea, Carolina, and Sara will be providing to us. A testimonial as theorized by Dr. Perez Silver, it's a verbal journey of a witness who speaks to reveal the racial, class, gender, and nativist injustices suffered as a means of healing, empowerment, and advocacy for a more humane present and future. And that's what the Building Bridges graduation is trying to do. Providing a space of empowerment, advocacy, but also an affirmation to the transporter identity. And I also don't have the time to read the amazing stories and bios of Andrea, Carolina, and Sara, but collectively they are Transfronterizas from the Mexicali Imperial Border regions. They're all graduates from San Diego State University, Imperial Valley. They are also all in their master's programs. So or some of them already finished their master's program. And the first question that I have for you is, talk to us about the days leading to and the day of the graduation. How was it? What were you feeling? How was your family? What were you feeling after the graduation? And I would like to start with Andrea.
Thank you, Carlos. El día de la graduación fue un día lleno de emociones positivas para mí. Me sentí como en un sueño. No podía creer que llegué a ese momento en el que completé una de mis metas que me costó tanto trabajo. Fue una gran alegría el poder celebrar mi graduación en mi ciudad natal, en mi casa, en mi lengua materna y rodeada de mis seres queridos. Por fin, después de todos los años en los que he estado estudiando en los Estados Unidos, mi familia se sintió incluida en la ceremonia y pudieron entender todo lo que pasaba porque estaba en nuestro idioma. Pude presentarle a mi familia, a las personas que me han apoyado en mi educación y se sintieron orgullosos de escuchar sobre todo lo que he hecho desde la perspectiva de otros. Ver las caras de orgullo y de felicidad de mis padres llenó mi corazón de alegría. También ser un ejemplo para mis pequeños sobrinos de que sí se pueden cumplir las metas a pesar de las adversidades fue un honor para mí.
Gracias, Andrea, por compartirnos tu experiencia. Y creo que una de las peculiaridades de esta grabación es que fue en español, que es importante para que nuestras familias puedan escuchar y entender con amor cómo se lleva a cabo una graduación en los Estados Unidos, pero en este caso estaba pasando en Mexicali o en Tijuana, respectivamente. Carolina, ¿te gustaría compartirnos la misma pregunta? En inglés, en español, ¿cómo te sientas más cómoda?
Gracias, Carlos. I remember looking at the posts on Facebook with pictures of the first building graduation and thinking how lucky they are. And I wish I had the same opportunity when I graduating from my bachelor's. Then a year later, I became one of those students participating in a transnational commencement ceremony. A few days before the commencement, I was feeling kind of nervous and stressed out because I was in the middle of the finals. But I was truly excited as well to have my mom there for the very first time. I didn't have to worry about taking enough pictures or videos to show my mom how the ceremony went, or wait until I got home to share with her every detail of the event, because she was there to see the event in person without having to look at the computer or a cell phone screen, just trying to figure out how to use these technology devices. My dad passed away 26 years ago, the same number of years my mom hasn't been able to cross the border again. That's why this ceremony made such a big impact in my life as an individual and student. The commencement even brought me to tears due to the very emotional speeches delivered about what it means to be a transborder student. I even had the chance to take a picture of my graduation outside of theater with my mom and my husband. Having a picture with my immediate family, like I used to see with other students that they do in the past, was just something else. After the ceremony, my family and I went to have dinner all together. The building bridges ceremony feels like a gift from life, but also from the team members who made it possible. And this gift was given to me after more than 9 years of doing the extra mile to achieve my academic goals. I'll treasure this transported graduation in my mind, but especially in my heart forever.
Thank you, Carolina. And just what you just mentioned, building bridges graduation is really a graduation that builds humanity in education, humanity within our transported communities. And it's very impressive that educational institutions sometimes forget that not all of us take the picture after high school graduation, after our bachelor's graduation. And just to expand on these sentiments and the feelings that we all had during the Building Bridges graduation, Sara Santiago is going to talk to us about her experience.
Hola, buenas tardes, ¿me pueden escuchar? Sí, ok.
Sí.
Primero que nada, quiero agradecerles a todos los que forman parte del comité y pues todas las personas que se encargan de llevar a cabo un evento como este, después de escuchar todos lo que tuvieron que hacer, de que tuvieron que andar en tacones y andar corriendo de arriba para abajo. La verdad me hace sentir más honrada de poder haber participado en una ceremonia tan importante con tanto esfuerzo y tanto trabajo. Y pues desde mi punto de vista como estudiante, la verdad es bien difícil tomarse el tiempo de celebrarlo, y más cuando uno está separado de su familia. Entonces para mí fue algo que cambió mi vida porque, para empezar, pues soy primera generación. Entonces mis padres no tenían nunca habían participado en una ceremonia tan importante. Entonces el tenerlos cerca conmigo fue algo único, una experiencia única. Otras cosas que quiero compartir con ustedes es que el haber estado tomando clases en Estados Unidos me hizo separarme mucho de mi familia. Me dediqué tiempo completo a estar en la escuela, a trabajar para poder solventar mis gastos, y pues me desconecté mucho de mis raíces que están en Mexicali. Me dediqué a estar más en Estados Unidos porque ya mi vida la comencé a hacer acá. Entonces desconectarme de esa manera fue muy difícil, y poder celebrar con mi familia ese día fue tan especial, y celebrarlo de una manera en que nosotros conocemos, ir a comer después de una celebración tan grande. Entonces todo el ambiente que rodeó esta ceremonia fue muy especial, el mariachi, todo, la verdad, todo fue muy bonito. Hablaban de cómo todo tuvo su tiempo. Hubo tiempo para fotos, hubo tiempo para convivir con mis amistades, sus familias de México también. Entonces hubo una gran convivencia que fue única y pues ahora estoy aquí tratando de compartir esa experiencia para que se siga llevando a cabo y otros estudiantes como yo puedan celebrar con sus seres queridos también.
Gracias, Sara. And thank you, Andrea, Sara, Carolina, for being vulnerable with us, with sharing your experiences, your testimonials, and empowering our community to further conduct this initiative along the borderlands. And the last question that I have for you all is, what would you like educational leaders to know about this graduation? ¿Qué sería una pieza de consejo que le dan a nuestros líderes educativos? Pueden pensar en aquellas graduaciones en high school, en la primaria. ¿Qué sería algo que le dijeran a sus maestros, a los directores? Vamos a iniciar con Carolina.
Ser estudiante transfronterizo en ocasiones se siente como una desventaja, ya que por momentos es difícil saber a qué país perteneces más, si a México o Estados Unidos. La cultura transfronteriza es única y valiosa, sin embargo, se necesitan más eventos como este para unificar a los estudiantes y a sus familias con ambos países. El hecho de no poder tener a tu lado a familiares que no pueden cruzar la frontera te hace sentir como un outsider, el cual no pertenece a ningún lugar. Como dicen, no eres ni de aquí ni de allá, porque siempre estás añorando la presencia de alguien en eventos como este, en graduaciones escolares en Estados Unidos. Los estudiantes transfronterizos tienen el mismo derecho que los que no lo son de compartir sus alegrías, esfuerzos y logros con sus familiares que se encuentran del otro lado de la frontera. Estados Unidos y México siempre tendrán una conexión especial por diversas razones y negarla no borrará el hecho de que hay familias separadas que no pueden celebrar junto a sus seres queridos como los demás. Holding events like the Building Bridges graduation recognizes the value that graduates have not only as students but also as human beings. Human beings who are willing to give back to the community and who want other leaders to join the cause of uniting borders inside and outside the educational field.
Gracias, Carolina. Y Sara, ¿cuál sería algún consejo que le darías a líderes educativos? What would be a piece of advice?
Yes, as educational leaders, we need to know about the Building Bridges ceremony, that creates a significant impact in bridging the inequality gap among the borderlands. This event should serve as a testament to the importance of advocating for and maintaining the access and capacity to continue creating these unique events. En otras palabras, me gustaría que apoyáramos este tipo de eventos porque creo que crea esa unión entre las fronteras en vez de dividirnos, porque muchas veces tenemos eso, como decía mi compañera Carolina, de que no somos ni de aquí ni de allá y sentimos una desconexión entre las comunidades. Entonces, este tipo de eventos tan positivos crean esa unión y crean una mejor comunidad más positiva para todos.
Gracias, Sara. Y por último, Andrea, algunas palabras que quisieras compartir con nosotros, algún consejo a líderes educativos. Y mientras hablas, voy a poner las imágenes que enviaste sobre el día de la graduación.
I would like the education leaders to know that Building Bridges graduation is a right for transborder students. And students commit to education and institutions by taking time away from their family or social life to be at the school and to complete their academic goals. Building Bridges graduation is a motivation for other transborder individuals to continue on the path to higher education. I strongly believe that we deserve the opportunity to celebrate our achievements with our loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Andrea, Sara, Carolina, for sharing your stories, por decirnos sus historias, compartir sus testimonios, and being vulnerable with us. I can tell firsthand that on the first graduation, I had a lot of issues being vulnerable just because of all the stress, the emotions that I had. It was very hard for me. And listening to your stories, being in retrospection, I totally see not just the value, but this idea of this graduation being a ride for us and for our families. To our audience, I would like to summarize a few takeaways from los testimonios, las historias de nuestras transfronterizas. The first one is that when institutions as SDSU embark in transformational practice as this initiative, we see the exponential change and dreams accomplished. Andrea, Carolina, and Sara, and I'll also include myself there. We all participated in this initiative. We all saw the support from an institution, the support from educational leaders, from student affairs professionals, from people who care. And we saw the institutional validation toward transporter identity. And that is very important. And that is contributing on how we are paying it back to our communities. All of us are graduate students in different institutions and different master's programs, and we are aligning our work with values of affirmation and community engagement. The second piece of takeaway is that when institutions and educational agents foster the success of transporter students, we're also fostering the success of our binational region. As educational leaders, as student affairs practitioners, as scholars, community members, we must hold ourselves accountable for taking, walking, and implementing the equity practice. We must be held accountable for having a vision of transformation and adaptation. Maybe not all of us in this forum experience the transporter identity, the experience of crossing the border to come to school. But if we all serve students along the borderlands, if we are at a Hispanic serving institution, maybe it is time to be creative and see how we can serve better a transporter population. Transporter students are often invisible within the schools that are predominantly Latino students, Latinx students. We're often at the margins of the institution. We're often waiting, doing line at the port of entry. So this space, this forum is a space of visibility. This graduation is a space of visibility and affirmation to our identity, and we must continue having it. And with this, I'd like to thank again Andrea, Sara, and Carolina. And I'd like to bring Dr. Falcon again to the forum to facilitate the Q&A session of the forum. Thank you, everyone.